the discussion today as best I can. I would encourage you, if possible, to try and avoid breaking off into separate conversations. If it's a big table, that's easy to do. So we'll try and keep a common conversation going, at least for most of the lunch, if we can. So I'm going to just give you a few introductory comments about some recent research that we published on the cloud computing sector in Australia. And David's invited along 4 vendors today of different cloud-based solutions or services, who are also going to give you their perspective on how they see the cloud sector in Australia. So we published some research last year on what we call the state of cloud computing in Australia. It was based on a pretty big end-user survey with about 2,000 Australian organisations to understand whether they're adopting cloud, why and how. And we found it's now pretty much mainstream. So 69% of Australian businesses now use some form of cloud computing service. Most commonly some kind of software as a service application, but also infrastructure as a service or platform as a service. And we found that of these, 41% currently spend more than 10% of their total IT budget on cloud services, and almost a fifth, 19% in fact, spend more than 20%. So the Australian cloud computing market, which has 3 main segments to it, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, and platform as a service, generated revenues for vendors of about $1.23 billion last year. So the 4 vendors in this room all form part of that $1.23 billion pile. I suspect all of them are a fairly small part of it, but nevertheless it's a pretty fast-growing market. We find the demand for cloud services is being driven by growing use of data-intensive applications, which is driving usage of back-end cloud applications needed to store and analyze this data. And cost saving continues to be, if you like, one of the key drivers of cloud computing. So one of the main reasons that companies are adopting cloud as opposed to on-premise solutions is to achieve cost saving. And our survey identified that typically organisations say they're achieving about a 12% cost saving through use of cloud compared to an on-premise solution. Now, when we compare Australia to other countries and other regions, particularly in Asia Pacific, Australia's adoption of cloud is very high. We're the fastest adopters in the Asia Pacific region, and probably second only to the US and the UK globally. For example, amongst all the countries that Amazon Web Services operates in, Australia is ranked as being in the top 3 or 4 for cloud adoption maturity and growth. And a high proportion of companies in Australia are now moving to adopt a full range of cloud solutions by migrating really most, or in fact in some cases all of their legacy applications to the cloud. And that's happening faster here than all other countries in the Asia Pacific region. And some of the vendors this afternoon, I think, will talk about what they're seeing in a particular segments of the market. But I think what I'd really like to focus on...
Have you got broad drivers that's using that speed of adoption? And I suppose...
Yeah, well, actually I'm going to come to that as I go on, because what we'd really like to focus on today is the fact that we're finding that as cloud computing matures and becomes more established, not just as a technology but perhaps as a business concept, organisations in Australia are getting a more nuanced view of its benefits faster than perhaps in other countries. And so as with many new services or products, initially we found cloud was adopted on the basis of its ability to lower both capital and operating costs for businesses, so reduced IT hardware requirements, reduced operating costs. But we're finding now with industry change accelerating, what's becoming more and more important in driving cloud adoption is the flexibility, scalability and adaptability that it offers clients that embrace it. And we're finding that more and more organisations are now seeing this flexibility, scalability and adaptability as the main reasons that they're adopting cloud. And across almost every industry, cloud computing is therefore becoming a cause, actually, of accelerating industry change. It's allowing startup companies to scale, to globalise, to expand rapidly. Some great examples. I mean, Airbnb, I suspect nobody in this room would have heard of 3 years ago, runs their entire IT infrastructure on the cloud. They're now the biggest hotel chain in the world. They operate in 180 countries, and they were founded in somebody's garage, I think, in 2009. Perhaps a more local example, a company like Shoes of Prey, which is a company for those of you who are like lady shoes. You can order your own custom-made shoes online, have them delivered anywhere in the world within 3 weeks. Again, they run their entire infrastructure on the cloud. So cloud's enabling these kind of small companies to grow in a way that simply wouldn't have happened with the use of on-premise software. Enables companies like Airbnb, like Shoes of Prey, to roll out innovative new business models globally very quickly. As I said, I think Airbnb, Shoes of Prey, perhaps Netflix are great examples of these kind of companies that run their entire infrastructure on the cloud. So we're finding that this adaptability is an increasingly important reason for adopting cloud, and organisations that have done so are recognising it can give them a real source of competitive advantage. So when we surveyed organisations that have adopted cloud, over 80% said that it had given them some kind of competitive advantage over their competitors that are not adopting a cloud-based solution. A competitive advantage perhaps in lowering operating costs, the ability to launch new products or services more quickly, and enhanced ability to enter new markets. So we're finding that we think that cloud is moving from a cost-based argument to an adaptability to a flexibility argument. And vendors are using that more as a selling promotional tool than simply the fact that it will save their clients cost. And so today we're going to hear from 4 cloud-based vendors as to how they're enabling their clients to achieve this kind of transformational industry change through the deployment of cloud computing. I'll introduce each vendor one by one. Perhaps ask them to start by telling us a little bit about their company, what they do, and then perhaps more important to tell us about how they see the cloud computing environment in Australia and how it's leading their clients to transform the industries they're operating. So let me first introduce Kim Benito from Zuora. Kim, perhaps you can give us a brief overview of who Zuora are and perhaps how your solution helps your clients to achieve industry change.
Sure. So Zuora was founded in the US in 2007. Our CEO and co-founder, Team Zoe, has been down here many times, and he was employee number 11 at Salesforce. So he saw the change that Salesforce, I suppose, the shift to a disruption in CRM and more importantly in the cloud and what it did to businesses. And he saw an opportunity. He saw an opportunity to change the way people consume products. So it's a company, we've got about 500 employees now, 750 customers, something like $8 billion in revenue is being put through our system because ultimately we call ourselves a relationship business solution that helps an organisation bring their customers together and build a better relationship with them. And at the core of that is a subscription revenue, recurring revenue billing model that you can use. I suppose the relationship business model is at the core of that, and it's in conjunction with CRM, so with Salesforce in particular, and changing the way we view the customer. Traditionally, software products and companies have focused on the products they sell. They build a product, they work out who they can sell it to, and then they try and market that product to a range of people. A shift in focus to the customer, putting the customer at the centre of everything, changes the way we are going to develop that relationship with the customer. One of the things we're focusing on in the cloud is the subscriber identity. It's not just about knowing the customer's name and address and email address. It's about really understanding their purchases, their payment, the way they like to pay, their consumption, how they use your product. So it's one thing to buy. Let's say you buy an education subscription. It's one thing to buy it. If you're not using it, I need to understand that and I need to enhance your use of my product, or next year you won't subscribe. So really digging deep and understanding my customers and building a relationship and maybe offering some training services after 3 months if you're not using it well enough. So I suppose Zuora see ourselves as not so much as a disruptor in the cloud, but more an enabler to enable our customers to be flexible, to scale and adapt quickly. But if our customers have a product they need to sell, ultimately they need to bill for it. And typically in the cloud, go hand in hand is a subscription or recurring revenue model. So that's the enabling part of that. And I suppose we are across a range of industries that are disrupting via the cloud. The obvious areas are software companies, like our clients Unleashed and Asset.Guru, who are here today, but also IT, telcos. Those sort of areas are obviously lend themselves to the recurring subscription, the media, to the subscription model. So they're obvious clients that we have in those space. If we looked at maybe the Adobe story, it's an interesting one. They took a good look at their business, and there was a quote that someone said, we are really trapped inside the boxes that we ship. Right? They really didn't understand their customers, piracy was rife, and upgrades were poor. They had to do something. Completely changed their business model to a recurring business model, overall revenues dropped a little, and 55% increase in stock price. Why? Because the market valued that cloud approach and the recurring revenue model. If you've got $20 million worth of revenue today, even if you lose some, you'll have 18 million tomorrow. Again, that's enabled by the cloud. A number of other companies in the telco space, for us, Telecom New Zealand was a great example. They were delivering a whole bunch of telco services, very old, staid company, weren't really delivering what customers wanted. You know, customers wanted an all-you-can-eat model, multi-channel consumption model. They got an entirely new product up within 12 weeks, again, using the cloud and being able to bill for it in a quick way. And really now that's been the platform. So I find that quite interesting. The customers that we work with are in a range of industries and will tackle their approach to the cloud very differently. Some will say, I need to transform my entire business, and that is in fact what Adobe did. Some will say, that's all too scary, and I need to find a way to tackle a small part of my business and see if it works and test the waters. And the likes of Fairfax did that. And others are startup businesses that see the light and start up a business that's purely in the cloud, that have a focus on the customer from the very beginning and deliver their services in that way. Other areas that we've seen change with the cloud are areas like the Internet of Things. I mean, and that's just going to explode. That the number of possibilities there, I don't think any of us can even understand what they might be. But some classic examples here in Australia is a company like Swan. Used to buy video cameras for home security out of Taiwan, sell them all over the world. But they saw their business was going to change, and over time, the price that they could charge for those and the use of those was diminishing. So they completely changed their business, released products where they are a home security company first, where they're monitoring, sell the camera, connect to your portal on the internet, and via your phone or your internet, they're watching the security, and it can be monitored, and if something breaks, a bit of glass breaks, all of a sudden you're alerted. So a whole range of security offerings around that completely changed, and again, they could only do that in the cloud. So the areas are quite unlimited, and we see ourselves as being there for our customers who have the good ideas, because ultimately those customers are going to have all these ideas, but if they can't monetize that relationship with their customer, that idea is really never going to get off the ground. They have to find a way to make money from it fairly quickly.
Oh, okay, thanks, Kim. So the next vendor I'd like to introduce is Chris Peterson from Asset.Guru. So same question for you, Chris. Tell us a bit about Asset.Guru, what it is that you do, the origins of the company, and then perhaps talk about how your solution helps your clients to be more innovative, more nimble, more adaptable to the industry that they're operating in.
So, good afternoon. I'm Chris Peterson from Asset.Guru, and we started in February last year, so we're the youngest of the bunch here today, and you know, it's a great crowd to be within. We launched in November, and we launched a product called Asset.Guru. Asset.Guru is all about fixed asset management. So it's the management of what you have and own as a company. It's a B2B product. And I guess one of the key things that we help companies to do is innovate and simplify their business. That's in a nutshell. Taking what we do into the real world, I guess one of the quotes I heard in the last couple of months which really resonated with me was the company Sage, a accounting giant in the UK, and they stated that a company which has a revenue of about $2 million worth of cash, obviously, has around about $50,000 worth of assets that are ghost assets. They call them ghost assets. Assets they either can't find, they don't know where they are, they've been misplaced or stolen or whatever the case may be. And if we equate that into Australian terms, because that's a UK stat, if we equate that into Australian terms, we use that same number. If my statistics are correct, it's around 60,000 Australian businesses that would fit that exact bill. If we took that exact bill and used that and extrapolated that in the same number, $50,000 worth of ghost assets, 60,000 businesses, that's about $3 billion worth of stuff that's out there within Australia alone, in Australian dollars, that is not being accounted for, that's lost, stolen, or whatever the case may be. In the case of what we do, is that we help companies find that stuff in terms of an action. In the case of a regime, we help small businesses to act like an enterprise. Enterprise asset management is a multi-billion-dollar industry, been around for decades. So we help these small to medium businesses act with that corporate rigor that normally an enterprise business would. And so what does that actually mean? So in essence, I think it really allows a small business to act like a large one, and a large business like a small one at the end of the day. So if we can help those sort of businesses innovate as a whole, we can actually help them grow their business as a result. So if our key drivers of that depreciation, then we can actually help their bottom line, which I think is quite key. So overall, when I'm coming from my Salesforce background, I think honestly, it's almost like a democratization of software as a whole and technology as a whole in what we're doing. And the same with Zuora and with Unleashed and the like, is that what we do is when we go into a business, we actually help that same empowerment of businesses no matter what sort of level they are as a whole. So, I was just going to finish up by saying that it's quite interesting that I think when I started the company is that we thought that small businesses would be our target market. We thought that the S in SMB would be our target market. However, what we've really found is that it's the medium-sized businesses that are really resonating with our pitch and where we're getting most of our leads. And the reason being is that they're the ones that are actually at the forefront and at that sort of the crunch point between they're not large and they're not small. And that at the end of the day, they're still using Excel, they're still having that power, or that pain I should say, and they still need to actually move their businesses forward as a whole. So it's been quite interesting to talk to those businesses because that's in essence what we do. We distill the essence of what an enterprise asset management product does and put that into the hands of everybody, hence the democratization of software. So I would say, just sort of as a quick wrap up, is that at the end of the day, I wonder whether the focus is rightly placed on, is it enterprise or is it small business? Which one's better, which one's more innovative, or what the case might be. I think it's more like a quote that came out in the last 2 weeks. Somebody said, I think it was somebody from Microsoft, forgive me, I forget who was saying it, was that it's like the internet's going to disappear. Was the catch quite quote that was on the front of the page of the website. And at the end of the day, I wonder whether whether enterprise software is going to disappear in that sense. Is it just becoming software? Do we start to have the end of enterprise vendors and small to medium vendors because of exactly what Mark said? Because there is that ability for a small company like myself, just started out in November, to actually operate just like an IBM who's been around for decades. And that's the challenge, I think, for the larger players to actually try and be all-encompassing across the marketplace with a very heavy cost infrastructure behind them, whereas somebody like us or any of the vendors in the room can actually be quite nimble and be quite reactive and innovative as a result.
Great, okay, thanks a lot. Chris, our next vendor actually is from over the ditch, as they call it, Tasman. I think one of a wave of software companies that have evolved in New Zealand in the past few years was a company called Zuora, which perhaps is the best example, but I'm sure Unleashed are just as good. I'd like to introduce Gareth from Unleashed Software, Gareth Berry. Yeah, so Gareth, same question to you. Perhaps tell us a bit about Unleashed, what you do, your origins as a company, and then how your software is helping your clients.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, I am from over this. Please forgive me. I am a Kiwi, but it's really interesting at Unleashed. We've been around since 2010, where our first product went into market, and since then we've been growing 100% as a company. We've been growing 100% year on year, and are forecasting to continue to grow 100% year on year. Although we're in 88 countries right now, 45% of our business is Australia. So certainly it's our main focus, and we've got offices in Melbourne, we've got offices in Sydney, and all of my sales and marketing activity is in Australia. Funnily enough, even though we're a Kiwi company, we haven't got a single sales or marketing person in New Zealand at all. So it's a really, really interesting market for us. When I had a look at, well, I guess the problem we solved, so we were an inventory system in the cloud, and what problems were we trying to solve? It was almost echoing some of the thoughts that Chris said there, and that with enterprise-based software, the inventory, the processes around inventory are cumbersome and non-existent in a lot of cases. So the founders of Unleashed, of which I'm one of the co-founders of, were working in massive companies like Bayer and Mitre 10 and Sealord, and finding that even though we're using SAP systems or Greentree systems and these ERP systems, everyone was running around with clipboards and pen and paper, or reverting to spreadsheets. And so we were really solving a problem. There was an inefficiency there, even with those larger systems. So we decided, well, we can solve this problem, so let's go out and do it. And it was around 2007 we made that decision, and also around that time, the internet was born, or SaaS-based software was, I guess, the next big thing. You can start reading. It's like, well, let's give this a go, because we don't want to be a consulting firm running around with disks and installing things on servers. We want to enable this globally, and so it's an efficiency thing from us, and a decision that we made from day one. So have a look at the companies that are using Unleashed, and we've got a 30,000-foot view of these companies. And in 2014, on average, Unleashed companies grew by 16% over the year. How does that compare to industry averages? And Australia is no different. If you were using Unleashed in January, you grew by 16% on average during 2014 year, which is pretty good. Having a look at the size of the data set, I mean, we are transacting hundreds and hundreds of, you could probably say millions, I suppose, of transactions, individual transactions. But if we just have a look at the invoices and the turnover of these companies, in the last quarter of 2014, we processed more than $600 million of revenue through Unleashed. So there's a pretty big subset of data there that we can have a look at. There's a big data, if you like, there's a big data play. There's some industry trends that we can see that are going on at 30,000 feet, and breaking it down by industry types and geographies. And this is, I guess, one of the things that the cloud is going to really surface over the next year. Talking about digital disruption and what the future is going to give us is, how's Unleashed going to give that information to each individual business? How are we going to enable that in some way to enable them to make a better business decision? How are they benchmarking themselves against other industry performers? What are some of the benchmark KPIs that they should be worrying about within their industries? I mean, these business owners that are using Unleashed are busy, obviously, doing their business. That taking a step back is pretty hard for them, and they certainly don't employ data scientists within their companies to surface that information. So that's the way we see the future. We have a look at a little bit of the past and some of the disruptions that have happened. We went from a card file system into a DOS-based world. There wasn't really much innovation going on there. It's like, oh great, it's computers, so we've got access to information. We went from DOS to Windows. It was almost like a productivity step backwards, because now you have to use a little mouse and have multiple windows doing, and if you weren't a multitasker, then that in itself was pretty impossible to get any efficiency gains out of. But then we go into the cloud and we say, okay, let's see if we can do something in the cloud and move these people off Windows. What sort of things, or what are some of the key drivers, I suppose, of people wanting to go into the cloud? And for sure, in those first few years is, oh, I've got a hardware server refresh, or my network goes down all the time, but the internet always seems to be up, let's try that. And so they were the key drivers. And now we have a look at the customers that are coming on to Unleashed at the moment, and they are looking for a competitive advantage. They're looking for an integrated system that's going to not cost them a lot of money, but give them data that they need, that they can base better business decisions on, at the drop of the hat, and give that information to people. There's a perfect storm of SaaS and distributed computing and mobile. Let's layer that on. I mean, if you're starting up a shop now and you're wanting to integrate that into your inventory system, then you're certainly not going to take a DOS-based system and see, right, let's see how we can integrate this new technology into that. It's a new world. And so we're really enabling the small guy, the little guy, to compete on a global scale and have a competitive advantage against, I guess, the less nimble enterprise customers of the world. There's an example of a particular customer based in Melbourne. I'll call them Customer X because I don't want to name them, but they were turning over around $20 million a year. Pretty successful, you would have thought. Until the end of the year, the owner found out that he actually lost $1 million, even though his accounting system said otherwise. You think, how could that happen? Well, there's an inefficiency going on in the company. Let's get some forensic accountants in and have a look. So what do the forensic accountants do? Say, well, let's run Xero and Unleashed and beside this, so at least I've got real-time visibility into what's going on in your company. Real-time visibility. So we're tracking margins in real time. We're tracking every single action that happens in real time. And it doesn't matter where in the world you are seeing this, you are able to make the decision at the drop of a hat, rather than running a periodic system and having a look at the end of the year of why I've lost $1 million. Within 1 month, we found the issue. They were importing goods and they were freighting them in, and their freight charges were being calculated at the end of a quarter. So the sales guys were actually running around thinking they were selling things at high margins. They're actually selling them at a loss by the time they caught where it was. So they fixed that issue and they're making money. Unleashed cost them $35. They were paying $15,000 a month to their ERP supplier just in costs. They were paying more and other stuff. For $35 a month, they were able to solve that problem, run their business efficiently, and start making money again. So digital disruption, I think it's here to stay. The cloud, it's only going to grow stronger. I think we're in our infancy of what we're really going to do here. We've got a perfect storm happening with all these technologies coming together, and really great to be part of it.
Thanks, Gareth. So the last vendor I'd like to introduce, and just say a few words. Sorry, there's a question before I move on. Question?
Yes, sorry to interrupt. Gareth, just so that I can place your business properly, do you think you're a contributor to people like SAP and Manhattan, or is it more the BioVs and the Xeros of this world?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question. So there's a time of the year where SAP B1 clients in particular are up for their renewal, and some of those renewal fees are quite exorbitant, some are around $80,000. And we seem to get a huge influx of clients inquiring, and a bunch of them coming on the software where the functionality is mature enough for those companies to come on. I think because we're so infant, and you think about the scale. So we're processing hundreds and hundreds of millions of transactions. The size and scale of the servers and the performance of the code and everything we do needs to be so precise. We can't tell a customer, oh, just go and buy a bigger server or get another server for that process.
Yeah.
We've got to manage that. So in order to do that, it just takes time. It's very slow. You think about Xero as an example. They've been around for about 7 years, a few years longer than Unleashed. But it's so slow to get product to market because it just needs to be absolutely precise and perfect, because everything you do is scaled like that, and it's global as well. So it needs to be fast, it needs to be secure, and it needs to scale. And those are the three core, I guess, underlying non-functional requirements in everything we do. So yes, we have some SAP B1 clients come in. It's usually around a compelling event, like requiring to pay some large fees for maintenance. But certainly the majority of our clients are coming, well, they're usually turning over between $1 million and $50 million. We have had examples of locally of Kogan, and Russell and Kogan use our software. I mean, he was doing more than 20,000 invoices a day. You know, he's moved on to SAP because he's obviously he needs that type of system, and that's great. But we were able to plug that gap for him for a couple of years while his business was able to enable that.
But do you also replace the WMS and?
Yeah, WMS. Now that's a different story. So definitely not. And it's one of the conscious decisions I've made, is that I don't want to be a WMS system. I don't want to go to the level where someone who's running a warehouse, that we need to know what aisle, what height, and where that is located, and do things like different picking efficiencies and things like that.
So you're still more in the business management, accounting field?
Yeah, it's definitely got an underlying, built on generally accepted accounting principles. We don't enable features like negative stock as an example, because it's just an accounting nightmare. Anyone who's got it, and you know, Intuit did this, and I think they've regretted it ever since. You just don't do that. If you know anything about imagery, you just don't do it. But some software people have done it, like Intuit, and probably regretted it ever since. So yes, we've got an underlying GARP principle that we build our software on, but certainly turning over between $1 and $50 million, that's where you become very interesting for me.
Okay, thanks. Good.
Okay, thanks a lot, Gareth. I'd like to introduce finally Peter O'Connor of Nimble Storage. So Peter, same question to you. Tell us a bit about Nimble Storage and how you help your clients to achieve competitive advantage.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I think some of you guys I've met before. I know I've met you, Alex, before, and a few from other lunches and so on. But you're probably sitting here wondering, what's an infrastructure provider doing, sitting at a cloud kind of venue, talking about cloud adoption and cloud disruption and so on. But I'll give you a couple of, I suppose, different points, mainly from an infrastructure perspective, and how the cloud is kind of changing the way we also conduct our business as an infrastructure provider. So our company was founded in January 2008 in San Jose, and we went public 13 months ago on the New York Stock Exchange. And we're in the business of providing data storage pretty much. We compete against all the traditional storage vendors that you've all heard so much about, EMC and NetApp and so on, over many years. As a matter of fact, I came from running NetApp here in Australia for the last 6.5 years before I joined Nimble Storage here in Sydney to begin the Asia Pacific business back in September 2012. So a couple of things. First of all, let me say, as a young technology company, we're a massive user of cloud services ourselves. So, and that was by design. So we use a lot of products that are quite well known now, like products like Workday and things like Concur for expense reporting, Salesforce.com. I think we have one of the most advanced deployments in the world of Salesforce.com, and our business pretty much fundamentally runs on it. Products like Exact, which is the commissions-based system, and so many other cloud-based applications, software as a service applications that we use right throughout the organisation. That's the first thing. The second thing is, there's a couple of things that have been changing in the infrastructure space and in the data center space, and that is customers are been increasingly fed up with buying 3 or 4 years of storage in advance and seeing it get consumed in 18 months due to exorbitant data growth rates and so on. And I think that's driven a lot of interest in finding alternatives for storing their data, and that has driven a lot of interest in the cloud, of course. And there are a number of different service providers that we have as customers. As a matter of fact, it's probably our largest industry vertical is the service provider market space. So we have about, as of the end of last quarter, we have about 450 service providers as customers, and they're all around the world. Some of them are software as a service. Companies like Concur, for example, use our products, but there are others that are infrastructure-based, service providers as well. And some of those locally here in Australia and of course in New Zealand as well. And also just the cost of power and building new data centers and running a secondary site these days has become so expensive that finding more cost-effective ways of storing data is really, really important. And even the cost of co-location expenses is growing quite rapidly as well, and a lot of customers are getting a little bit frustrated with the size or inefficiency of their infrastructure that they run in some of these locations, and so therefore there's an interest in trying to reduce some of that cost as well. So we, first of all, when we went public, we decided that we were going to come out with a model that was fitted purposely for service providers, and that's now been extended to the enterprise, where we have a storage on demand model where we charge our customers a rental fee for our product. So it's not like other storage vendors that will use a third-party financing company or a leasing company to provide a stepped lease or whatever it might be over 3 to 5 years, because that's still a long-term commitment. We basically own the asset, we rent it to the customer on a per used gigabyte or per used terabyte per month basis in arrears. And that can be and also performance driven. So we can also bill for the number of IOPS per terabyte if there are high performance workload requirements, right down to just capacity based requirements as well. So providing customers a lot of flexibility in the way they may store their data, as opposed to buying a lot of assets up front under the traditional CapEx model. And thirdly, I'll just talk about how the cloud has brought opportunity for us as a vendor, and I think we do, and this is in the area of support I'm going to talk about, an unbelievable job. We believe that in a connected world we could provide a much better support experience for our customers, and so we actually employed our support organisation about 1.5 years before we started shipping products, and our first shipped products were in August 2010. And they built a whole lot of sensors into our array and file system, hundreds and hundreds of them in fact. So every 5 minutes, each array around the world sends a little heartbeat, a little SMTP packet of information back to a big data warehouse that we have in San Jose. And we collect about 50 million pieces of data from every array every day. And it goes in this big data warehouse where we have about 5 or 6 data scientists in San Jose that have written a lot of algorithms that can detect any performance variation between one heartbeat to the next. And they are currently 5-minute heartbeats, and later this year we're going to 1-minute heartbeats, so it becomes almost like a real-time proactive wellness service is what we call it. And as a result of that, we can detect a lot of issues in advance of any kind of problems or outages or anything that may occur, and send down proactive fixes and support calls and so on to make sure that the array continues to function as it should. And as a result of that, now uptime runs today right across our installed fleet of about 7,500 arrays, which is over 5,000 customers, runs at about 99.9997 in terms of uptime or availability, which is extraordinarily high in the storage field. But because all that data that we collect, so our support is, our level 1 and level 2 support is all automated. And 92% of the support calls in our company is Nimble Storage putting the support call on the customer, which is very, very unique. And so what we do then is that all that data that we collect, we allow our customers then to log into this cloud-based portal that we have over in San Jose. They can do a whole lot of management of their products, so we keep all the data forever that we've collected. So there's obviously hundreds and hundreds and millions of pieces of data on every array. And customers can do a whole lot of analysis around their past trending and utilization to planning on where their storage trending is going and their utilization is going. It's great for our reseller community because the customers will we'll give our resellers access to that so they can see how their customers are adopting our product, how their utilization performance is going, whether they might need more cache, whether they might need a processor upgrade, when they might need some additional capacity added and so on. So it's great from a reseller point of view as well. So that's a cloud-based portal, and it's very much around our support. And quite honestly, if I asked we've got about 400 customers in Asia Pacific now. If I asked our customers what is the best feature you like about our product, the performance and cost, low cost capacity and so on are obvious ones, but the one that really sticks out would be, without a doubt, the way you support your customers is unique in the IT industry, let alone in the storage infrastructure space. So it's just an idea of how we're kind of providing cloud services as an infrastructure provider, to our customers. So it's definitely changing things. I think we have the luxury of being a reasonably young company. Some very smart guys build our file system, and they looked at these things in advance and build a very unique product, which has got very fast customer adoption. So I hope some of you guys, the co-vendors in the room, may find a home for our products in your respective businesses as we go forward.
Okay, thanks a lot, Peter. So I'd just like to open the conversation up a little and perhaps just pose a couple of questions myself to the vendors.
Oh, sorry. Mike, I say, sorry, just one last thing that we're currently doing at the moment is there has been, obviously a few issues. Some of the big banks and so on that we've been talking to with APRA around putting your data into the cloud and so on. And so we're coming out with another, I think, a cloud-based enabler. So a lot of customers have security-related issues around their data. They want to keep their data in their own data center, and potentially we have a way now to connect to Amazon and Zuora and other cloud providers, where the customer keeps the data in their own data center, but uses the compute and other facilities and functions of a cloud provider like Zuora or Amazon or others. So just giving customers that peace of mind around security, and also being able to move their data, as they see fit, as opposed to being locked into one cloud provider.
So that brings me on to the next question. I'm going to pose to the vendors. You're out in the market every day pitching cloud-based solutions to your prospective clients. I'm going to ask how you find the receptiveness applied to cloud-based solutions has changed, perhaps over the past 2 or 3 years. Are people now much more receptive, much more understanding? And what are some of the major barriers that are still out there in terms of people not wanting to adopt cloud solutions or not being concerned? Peter referred to security. Are there others that you're finding? Perhaps we start with you, Gareth. What are you finding out there in the cloud space?
Mark, can I just say, just to remind the speakers, we've got journalists here from manufacturing, logistics, retailing. If the speakers could perhaps answer what they're seeing in perhaps different vertical markets, where it's relevant to you.
Yeah, me?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Okay, so reframe the question. So, what are some of the barriers to?
Well, how are you finding the receptiveness of clients to cloud-based solutions has changed over the past 2 or 3 years, and what are you finding that the major barriers out there still are?
Okay. So from I guess the company point of view, we've got more than 64 cloud-based applications that we use to run our business. We are 100% in the cloud, and that's growing. I provisioned another 4. We do an authority to get another 4 applications in the cloud. So we're a 100% cloud business, and this is the sort of thing that the businesses who use our niche also find. And they enable things like Google Apps for their email clients, just as an example. You've got banking applications you want to integrate with. Well, they'll be cloud-based primarily. You've got payroll, generally speaking, it's in the cloud. So the adoption of cloud is basically, it's here. We've broken through, I guess. There's no underlying, there's a security concern or things like that, because things happen in the cloud. We certainly know that they happen. But certainly people can live with those as long as there's an underlying, like we've got a non-functional requirement of being fast, secure, and scalable. So we take those sorts of things around security seriously. We've got hackers that we employ to try and hack our own application and find the security flaws or potential security flaws. We've got the data architects and the data scientists to give us an underlying view of those things. So when we put something into production, we know that it's as tight could be. Obviously password sharing and things like that, you're never going to be able to get around it. But certainly if you gave someone your banking password, then that's just silliness. So yeah, there really isn't any barrier for people who are coming to us and looking to purchase our solution. And you know, to give you some size of scale, I mean, we get roughly around 250 inquiries into our software every single week. And so there's certainly enough volume of people there just for an inventory system. These would be retailers, these would be manufacturers, people who are wholesale distributors that are looking for a solution to move into the cloud for. So they've already analysed the cloud and assessed the security risks. But certainly someone doesn't buy because it isn't the cloud anymore. By the year 2020, I don't foresee anyone ever buying an on-premise piece of software ever again. And that's sort of happening now.
With so many clients in so many countries, so the data sovereignty issues largely off the table now, or particularly with emerging markets like China and India?
China's an interesting one.
I'm just wondering whether it's coming out again.
Yeah.
Every time we get something like NSA popping up, does something must re-emerge as this issue?
Popping up, and we made a little joke about it. NSA's watching me. Yeah, the interesting question around data sovereignty there. So location to where the data is something that's really important to us. It's something that we've architected for. So we are adopting the Microsoft Azure platform, and what that enables us to do is have data replication, duplication all over the world. So yes, we could say, hey, your data's in the United States as an example. That's probably the one that's closest to home for us, because people in the United States, businesses in the United States, like to know where the data is and make sure that it's within their four borders. So we've enabled that on the west coast of the United States, but then their data in terms of uptime, I suppose, making sure that it's always on, no matter what. It needs to be accessible anywhere. And so therefore, putting in Singapore, Australia, and UK, there's data co-hosting places, so that data actually belongs in all four at the same time, rather than just in one. It's really, really important. And then we stick things like content delivery network facilitators over the top of that. So for us, that's a program called Akamai, which is the world's largest and biggest CDN network. CDN's an acronym, sorry guys, I was told not to say that, but I will. Yeah, so it's the world's largest, and it's never been hacked. You know, touch wood, that never will be hacked either. So that puts another level of security.
That you don't know about.
Yeah, or safety around it. Yeah, well, I think everyone would know about it if it was. So yeah, it's really, really interesting. So security is really, really important to people. Data sovereignty is important to people as well, but controlling that really becomes an issue. So if someone really, really wanted their data in that location, they're probably best not choosing a cloud-based provider, and then managing all of the costs around the infrastructure and making sure it's always on themselves.
I think the issue that I've been to sleep that hasn't really come up is the legal jurisdiction issue. And I don't think that the last week you alluded to that sort of making the discussion. It just seems to me that we haven't had a really serious court case yet to bring that up.
Just getting on the conversation as well, I spend a lot of time in Asia, like about 75% of my time is spent away in Japan and China and other places. And whilst I agree with your comment, I might argue 2020 might be a little early, but certainly in places like China, I think they'll still be on-premise software, whether they pay for it or not, another thing. Yeah, those countries are still very far behind, what Australia is doing in terms of moving, particularly business information to the cloud. You've seen companies like Baidu emerge and so on. There's a lot of cloud-related services, but in terms of trusting a cloud provider with their business information, it's still going to be a long, slow grind. And 70% of the China market, certainly from an infrastructure point of view, is still very much government, and there's a real reluctance to embrace some of these emerging capabilities in markets like that. And even to some degree, Japan as well. Japan is moving faster than China, so there are issues, for sure, and it will take a while longer for countries like that to embrace it, purely because of more history than anything else. In terms of their, most of these companies have got 3 sets of books, and they'll show whatever set of books whoever wants to see the right set of books. And so having accurate data in the cloud for potentially other people to see is not something that's a key motivator for us. So,
I have a question just to steer the conversation to. From this meeting here, it seems to me that it's really about these small to medium businesses that you're working with. But when you talked about security, privacy, offshore, what about the three key sectors that we're leading the cloud, which is government, finance, healthcare? I would imagine that they still have issues around exactly what you've outlined. It's not to do with the 3 sets of books in China, but what are the barriers at that level?
Yeah. I mean, Peter, can you comment on Australia, in terms of data sovereignty? Are there any particular differences between industry verticals? I mean, I think Shahid is right that it's maybe the government and the financial services sector that are most concerned about data sovereignty, data security. Is that your perspective? Or
this is just my own viewpoint, right? So obviously I get to meet a lot of prospects and customers and so on. And I know that one large bank in particular, which I won't name, has been trying to get their product into the data into Amazon for 5 years and have fundamentally given up, except for maybe archive, because APRA has stepped in and said there is no chance that a lot of this particular data is going to reside in someone else's data center other than your own.
Offshore? Or?
No, it's actually within Australia, but it's outside the boundaries of their own data center.
Right.
So there are concerns there, and I think that's not going to be solving their issue. I think it's going to be an issue with, I think healthcare in particular could be one,
right.
a real ongoing concern, but that doesn't mean these customers are not going to stop moving stuff to the cloud and embracing cloud-based applications, for sure. Whether some of the mission, I think it will take a little bit longer for some of the mission-critical applications to find their way into those kinds of environments.
Are you finding a separation from the data storage to the cloud applications? Starting people using the cloud applications to work the data remains on-premise in the country?
Well, that raises the whole question of tokenization, where you may well hold, and there may be specific data, so there may be 80% of your data that's quite fine to be floating around. But some core, in our case, customer privacy, personal data in terms of health, may well need to stay on shore. So then your application needs to consider tokenizing it. For those that don't, I'm no expert in that either, but ultimately it allows your cloud-based software to track a token that reflects back to a piece of data that's sitting on shore. And we may see, again, that may be a future area. We've got some clients doing that now. In Canada, in financial services, that's an area where if you're working with the banks, they're just overly cautious. It's not actually regulation, but some of our clients are demanding they do that anyhow.
There was a case of one of the Canadian banks that was caught by the Patriot Act because their data was in the US and they actually had to give it up to whoever in the US was after it. So, one of the Canadian banks are particularly cautious.
So a particular client now is just overly cautious, and that's how they're tackling that.
That's probably about legal jurisdiction. Sorry, the problem with Patriot Act is a good example. It's not just for who you
Well, the data center operators here have been sometimes in fear of God when it comes about the Patriot Act. However much is justified, I'm not quite sure. That the US Consul will now be out in the US one time and try to sort of play down these fears. I suspect they are quite real.
So I guess then the question would be, what does it mean for your business? As in, you talked about a massive growth in cloud services. I'm assuming these are this is the broad sector. Does it mean you're selling public, private, hybrid? Where is the opportunity for you?
For selling?
Correct.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, for us as an organisation, seeing us as an enabler, it's about any business that sees, not so much, they don't think of themselves as wanting to move into the cloud. They see themselves as wanting to move into a subscription model of selling their products. By definition, that tends to mean they buy software that they can subscribe to, they sell their products to, look at Spotify, someone who sells music, no one buys CDs anymore. We want to consume music via a subscription approach. And then they understand me, and they understand the music I listen to, so they understand me as a subscriber. So then they start feeding me more music. So that business came up with an innovative idea. The cloud enabled it, but it wasn't necessarily that anybody was targeting, whoever is running all of their software, they weren't targeting specific businesses. I think This is a combination. So one of the things we see our role is to educate customers in where these consumption models are going. And they are going to the cloud and recurring revenues, and then helping the customer decide what's going to make sense for them in their own business. Like I said, it could be a startup, could be a pilot program with a left of field, or it could be a transformational project, or any of those three. So just educating them and then helping them go down the path that they feel is most appropriate.
So Chris, from your perspective, asset information, is that something that customers are very concerned about, where that data about their assets resides? I mean, is that an issue for you in selling your solution?
Yeah, I mean, once again, I mean, our target market is the small to medium enterprise, Australia, part of Australia, the UK, United States, and New Zealand. And I simply haven't had that come up in conversation at all. So we've had quite a few hundred conversations already with prospects and customers, and it's simply because it's different type of information. It's not necessarily customer savvy. It's actually business centric within their own boundaries of their own financial information. And once again, it's not personal as well because of that. Because it's B2B, is what we do. We actually take a step away from a lot of the big red, flaming red flags in this style of discussion in a good way. I mean, I'm proud to be a point solution. I have no shame in saying that, and this is what I love about it, is that by being a point solution, by being a boutique, specialized solution, you actually can skirt the boundaries that an enterprise solution actually cannot. So the start of the discussion with an enterprise piece of software is, great, let's talk about asset management. Oh, but by the way, you're also buying an ERP system at the back end, and well, okay, so what's the security like in every single layer of that software? And so I think that's the way the market is changing and evolving, is that not only do you get to mix and match, the old, you go to the movie theaters and you get the exact type of candy that you actually want. It's exactly the same for IT managers today that were, in the early 2000s, they were beaten over the head by vendors in the software world. They're now being embraced and embracing of the software world in the cloud, that is. And I think skirting around those issues on purpose and for good reason, because they actually alleviate themselves with the compliance and burden because of what it is. What does that piece of software do? What's the requirement behind that? What are the limitations of that software? And therefore, what's the answer? Is that a compliance issue or not? In most cases, we're finding it's not, and in our case, it's definitely not.
So you're selling to clients who are already convinced of the benefit of a cloud-based solution, in other words?
We're selling to clients that are convinced of the fact that Excel can't fulfill their business need.
Right.
so whether that size of client is a $100 million business or a $1,000 a year business, quite literally, that it's really about how the heck do I get myself off a platform that's not scalable, not really usable, and rife for security and other risks in its own right. I think there's a far greater fear that somebody could press into their email system the wrong email address and send it off to a third party, a competitor, or just simply a vendor that has no privacy policy, that is offshore, and that does have compliance issues because they're based somewhere else. That's the greatest fear, is that email becomes the risk, not the part of that system that can be secured by using a password.
So you're basically replacing manual processes internally. Is the competition there for the asset management parts of an ERP system? You're competing with a point solution against a broader solution that includes asset management?
Yeah, great question. We would love to get there. Our aim, in my particular aim as founder of the company, is to have our products sit below what enterprise asset management does. So in terms of how I place myself in the market, I would love to get a customer throughout its life cycle, right up to the stage where they become so complex in their needs that they would say, hey, at the end of the day, I need something that only IBM or Microsoft or SAP or Oracle can provide because of that absolute complexity and unique customer requirements. And I would gladly say, we would love to help you with that journey. And that's what it's about. It's about a customer journey and helping them innovate throughout their life cycle stage, not just where they are right now.
Just to move the topic on, it appears to us there's actually quite a big disconnect between.
Yeah. Question. That's probably more you. In your survey, I just want to, just the way that cloud applications develop. In the pre-cloud day, we always have problems with integrating different software, particularly from different vendors.
Yeah.
Are we reaching that stage now with cloud? Perhaps, particularly if you're a big company, you might have this bit of that, bit of that, bit of that. How well are they integrating? Is it something that, to some extent, I find that cloud providers don't So fixing their own little cloud. Sort of think about
Well, I think about that's the vendors to answer how well your solution
It's actually, I know you got to watch that episode. It's a hugely considered approach for us. Anything that we put up there or advertise as being integrated, whether we've done it or someone else, goes through a huge rigorous testing process and security tests and all those things. Like, we need to be able to support an integration even if someone else has done it and wants to sell it, as globally to our customer base. For us to integrate with someone, and we've only got 5 key integrations that we've done, it costs us more than $1 million on each integration that we do, and there is no change from $1 million. And the clock's ticking once you've done it and released it too, because you need to continually support each change, the changes in technology. Zuora is a good example. We integrated with them with their API version 1 when they had 3,000 clients. Version 2 came out, and then iterations of version 2 came out. Same thing with Vend. We didn't even get to the launch and release of the first integration. We were still building it when they changed the underlying technology, and so we had to re-architect it internally. So there's a huge, huge investment on us to do it, which is why we choose our integration partners very, very carefully. They've got to have a marketplace, they've got to be scalable, they've got to have a robustness, they've got to have some compliance around them. When we chose Zuora, it's like PCI compliant, hallelujah. Okay, so there's a few things that are really, really important with each one. So it's a massively considered process. The integrators, there's a few. There's one in Australia, there's Zapier, there's Carrier One, and there's people who say, hey, we'll integrate all of your components on there. Give me a toothpick and poke my eye out first. They work half the time maybe, and it's something that we don't support, and say, hey, if you want to integrate an integration with Unleashed and that lemon stand ERP or whatever, and you can find a piece of middleware that's going to connect them up, go fill your boots, but it's not something that we're going to support or advocate that we do.
I was going to ask, it appears to us there's actually a disconnect between you look at Australia's ranking in Asia in terms of internet infrastructure and our ranking in terms of adoption of cloud. And we're very, very good at adopting cloud. Internet infrastructure is actually lagging many countries like South Korea, like Singapore, like Hong Kong. So I'd like to sort of pose the question to the vendors. Is the internet infrastructure in Australia in any way an inhibitor to people taking up your service in the first place, and secondly, successfully deploying it when they've done so? Christian, would you like to start?
Sorry, could I just add to that question, because I think it's a good point you make. But we talked a lot about data sovereignty being a concern. What I hear a lot from vendors and from channel partners is the issue of speed in terms of mission critical applications. And do you think that in some way supersedes the concern about sovereignty? Obviously we've got storage vendors here that would look at the sovereignty as a big issue with what they deal with day to day. But in your conversations with industry, how do you see that as a
company owner? Customer experience has to remain the first thing that you think about, I think, when you start the day. And I think that answers your question, is that if the data speed, for example, is it impacting customer satisfaction and customer experience, then in some way that does almost cut against the jig of this whole data sovereignty angle of business. But I think that's the reason why companies like Zuora spend a lot of time looking at sharding and the other types of technology in order to spread their data over across the globe for that very reason. And by the way, it also helps with the data sovereignty issue. I mean, working for Salesforce like I did, I know that was a massive thing for them to start to go to a pod-based system with their own data infrastructure, with their own systems. And that's a great problem to have in its own right. Yes, it's a nightmare for the vendor, but it's a great problem to have because it makes the customer experience better, and it actually answers the need, which is where get your applications as close as you possibly can to the end customer. And I know there's different technology angles we can talk about around that, but that's part of it.
Peter, your view on the internet infrastructure, is that in any way an inhibitor to...
I'm really not the one to comment on that, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think seriously, I don't see any difference really between most of the countries these days. It's all pretty slick.
Yeah.
So you know, Korea once had a really good lead and hasn't happened to come back to the field, but I think the infrastructure is pretty similar in terms of speed and access.
Yeah, okay. But that's not an inhibitor in any way to Australia to take up with cloud services such as storage.
No.
And would you agree with our assessment that Australia is leading Asia Pacific in terms of cloud adoption? I mean, is that, you said you travelled a lot through Asia, is that the impression that you get?
Yeah, without a doubt. As a matter of fact, I'm surprised the US is even in front of Australia.
Right.
And Australia is a very early adopter of new technologies, and virtualization is a great example of what happened. Australia was always leading the virtualization race, and probably still is today the most heavily virtualized country in the world. So I think it's no surprise that Australia be towards the top of the list. I'm surprised they're not at the top of the list, quite honestly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Do you mind if I just backtrack on this point you've raised about internet infrastructure? Would broadband be an issue in Australia for people to observe? Australia is in the forefront with the uptake of cloud services, but not outdated internet access. Does it take us back to the question about the ability for the broadband backbone to support that? Just from your observations.
Well, the question I was posing to vendors is that it does appear to us that there is a bit of a disconnect in terms of our ranking in terms of internet infrastructure, particularly broadband speed and reliability, and the adoption of cloud services. Tim, would you have a view on that as to why that doesn't appear to be an issue here in Australia?
That's not particularly a question that comes up with us at all. And there's probably a few reasons. We see ourselves very much as an enabler, so we're an engine right in the middle. So we talk about the integration question earlier. Everything we do is written from the ground up, because apart from small, very small players, most of our players will use us to drive billing of their software that sits on a portal already and then to connect to us. And also connects to Salesforce. So we tend to be this engine in the middle. There's not a lot of UI, the front end where the user's doing things, maybe in the accounting department. Now, of course, there's a focus on that, and I just saw some statistics that said we are pushing more transactions through than Amazon per second. And that's something we did. We worked on scalability. So to Gareth's point, it's something we're focusing on all the time. We're never quite there. We'll every year on the roadmap, there's a whole range of scalability and adaptability and security roadmap items that we need to tackle. And if we sat back on our laurels, we would never get there, but we're constantly trying to improve that.
You do hear around the tracks. You speak for very large companies, financials.
Yeah.
So we really dependent now on data communications. So it's one of the three topics where we don't have enough money.
Yeah.
And somebody said, I heard just the other day, somebody saying, problem players that up till now it's been untapped. So there's more and more development there. It's actually raising the potential of streaming video. So no one can actually work out what the capacity for the major networks and stuff. It's something that's always hard to find out.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting what impact Netflix does have on the bandwidth in Australia.
I see the country keeps in
Yeah, but it makes sense.
Yes,
Another topic that I'd like to explore is the degree to which cloud is seen as somewhat of a threat to the role of an IT department in your customers. So we find a lot of clients are now, rather than selling, if you like, to the CIO or the IT manager, are now pitching their solution to the CFO or even the CEO. And the IT department is often seen as a bit of a barrier because they're reluctant to go down the cloud route for reasons ranging from job losses through to lack of control, lack of power. I mean, are you seeing that? Are you moving away from an IT-related sale to a CEO or CFO-related sale?
Well, our pitch really is around business value and how to drive business solution or business answers to business. So from that perspective, we can't help but speak to the CFO or the CEO or even the administrators of an organisation to help them actually figure that role. So from our perspective, the role of IT manager is simply not coming up to conversation. It doesn't mean that they're not relevant. It doesn't mean that. It just means that the type of person that we're directly answering a pain point for is really the person that's at the front, at the coal face of the business. And they're people that are empowered. And I think this comes back down to, I hate to bring it down to the rudimentary points, but price point. In the old days, when you're selling an enterprise level solution at 200,000 or 1.2 million, you had to garner the support of every single person in the business, including the IT manager. But at this day and age, the sort of price points that Gareth and I work at, you're talking, 49, 39, 100 to 110, whatever the case may be, dollars a month. That's a business expense somebody could put on their credit card. So just as much as you'd say to your employee, you went to a lunch, what was the business outcome of that? For the same price point, you're coming back and saying, you bought a solution, what's the business outcome for that? And so that's where we really see the big difference in the game changer and why I think IT is not as involved to answer your question.
So IT is not as involved, but when they do get involved, you see them as a facilitator or as a barrier to use of your solution?
I mean, we haven't had any barriers so far, thank God, but at the end of the day, that really revolves around training and understanding. So the reason why they would become a barrier would be like an understanding as to what we do and how that could impact other potentially mission-critical applications within an organisation and accountability one, for example.
Can you review on that, the role of the IT department in the right decision for your solution?
The people we work with range from a very small startup company to the likes of News UK or Citrix or Yahoo, huge companies. So the level of involvement by what we would call the five guys in the room, which is the CEO, CIO, the sales, product, we try to get them all engaged. The CIOs in general, if the business is bought into the move, and it's again the move to the cloud and move to a subscription base, it's from the top down. The CIO will come in when the decisions are made, this is the way we need to go, to just validate that decision. And whether they talk about data sovereignty or security or PCI compliant, they will come in and check those things, and we will connect them with the right people to check that. An interesting example I think we've got, as you're posing that question, I was thinking through Deloitte Australia, who are a customer of ours, and the guy I'm most engaged with is one of the heads of IT there. I don't know what his title, CIO or close to, but he's a business guy first and foremost. He sees our platform, they've transformed their entire business of Deloitte Private to be one of delivering accounting or professional services by the hour to delivering it on a subscription basis. It's quite different. And the IT team were at the core of that, in enabling that and looking at all these connections that they needed to do to other systems. For instance, they're connecting to Zuora, they're connecting to a whole range of other systems to enable them to deliver the best possible accounting service to their business. And IT was at the core of that, but they were positive in that regard in seeing their role changing rather than being negative.
Right.
Not always the case, but that was a great experience.
Peter, in your perspective, the storage products, IT would have a role in that decision. How do you find the role of the IT department and your clients in making a storage-related decision?
The storage guys are a weird mob, man. Let's get that out there. I think it's not too dissimilar. When you have a much more efficient storage product like we do, they certainly feel under threat because you used to have 6 guys run 2 petabytes of storage, and now you need 1 guy to run 3 petabytes of storage because it's that much more efficient. Deloitte's an interesting example, but they're a customer of ours, but they're also a very innovative company when they come to IT. And Tim Fleming, the CIO there, is a good friend of mine, and they're always right out there at the forefront of doing things. I think I'd put a little bit different spin on it because I might ask the other vendors in the room, do you guys have any channel partners that sell your services to customers? Or because probably some of the bigger threat today is more to the traditional channel players that are out there as opposed to the IT departments. When we go in there and deliver a solution, the IT guys are saying, thanks, you freed up some some spare cycles for some hours for us to go do other things, right? So it's not so much of a big thing, but I think, you know, just talking to Chris before, you know, Chris is from ARN, you know, the threat to the channel infrastructure is more great from what cloud is bringing than what I believe will be to the IT department.
And that's because the need for integration like professional services is zero, or it's much smaller than the cloud-based solution.
It's considerably less, that's for sure.
But that still requires the vendors to have their own direct sales team, because they still need to sell the solution to clients. So,
or there's ways of trying to innovate and find ways that the channel can be motivated to get a piece of it. Right?
yeah. So Gareth, from your perspective, how do you see the role of the IT department in when you make a sales pitch?
So my company has a channel. We've got over 550 global channel partners that sell support, service, unleashed clients. And that's growing just organically every single month. You know, 20 to 50 channel partners want to sell support and service unleashed customers. So to ask the question around the CIO, I mean, they're always going to exist. It's just like anything. Technology is just a catalyst for change within that industry. And it's happened to every single industry, and the financial services industry is absolutely, you know, we're not immune from that. You know, like the accountants now, rather than just running around and trying to collect data and things like that, it's instantly available. So how are they adding value to that function? And the CIO's got value to add to this function as well, because we're not an island. Back into the integration question: how do we do this? Our business does X, Y, Z. How can we use Unleashed as a component of that and wrap all the other components around it, whether it be CRM and Salesforce, whether it be payments and subscriptions, or something like Zuora, whether it be asset management, and whether it be accounting. We need the end-to-end process. If we're going to adopt the cloud, how do we get this? Now, shy of going to somewhere like a NetSuite, where you might be able to provision that sort of thing all in one, you're going to be looking at these individual components. And so CIO, or a cloud integrator, becomes really, really important in that discussion. Otherwise, back to your point, the onus becomes back on the individual sales forces and pre-sales architects to really put that together. And when we go down that route, no longer does the low price point make sense anymore, because we can't provision that software for the cost of the services that we need to wrap around it. So therefore we need to move up the food chain and start charging, you know, proper service fees and become consulting companies and things like that. So I've been engaged with consulting companies like Deloitte Private, and I know all the guys there, one of our big resellers. You know, right down to right up to a Cognizant, they're doing sort of 8 billion of turnover every day, and they're always looking at ways that they can innovate and how they can see what's going on with this digital disruption. And they say, I know something's there. How are we going to add value? So we've got this function in our business. This is what we do. How can we use that and continue that? Well, the answer is you can't. It's not a like for like, but it's rather how can you prepare yourself for change in the future? So when, you know, the sandstorm comes, you're prepared for it and still able to be in business and innovate. So there's huge companies in the world that are looking at this as a point of inflection where they can change for the future.
So you bring on, you have such a broad channel network, and you bring on so many new channel partners every month or week.
Yeah.
How do you ensure quality and accreditation of those channel partners?
I enable cloud services like Litmus as a training platform to enable a global reach. So we've got, once again, we've had to build those services, and they take years to build. Content is just so difficult to build and get right, curate, get out there, deliver it globally, and then maintain it going forward. And I've got an army of people doing nothing but content delivery, and then provisioning that through those services like Litmus, which is probably the world's premier training platform.
What about you, Chris? Do you use channel partners to go to market after this?
Yeah, well, we're brand new, so we've got a lot of different ways that the road is already being blazed for us by Zuora. Actually, Zuora is the first channel partner for asset management, and a lot of different ways we use in the channel, their channel, which is an accounting partners, to be our channel. So in a lot of different ways, it's pretty educated, pretty built, and pretty organised for us in that essence. So that's our best route to market.
So are all of your customers then existing Zuora customers who take your modules and add on to a Zuora at the moment?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So that's not our long-term strategy, but absolutely at the moment a Zuora play.
And you're not partnering with anyone else other than Xero at this point in time?
Not at this point in time, but we're actually working with Intuit, with QuickBooks, and that's technology's already developed. We just need to finalise that step in that stage, but we hope to launch that later this month.
What about Mario?
We'll see.
Watch this space. Okay. What about you, Kevin? Do you use channel partners to go to market?
Yeah, it's probably a little different. We've spent a lot of time. We just literally in Europe announced our huge partnership with Accenture. We've already been working with them in the US and Australia, so an accelerated program in Europe, both to sell the product or the sales as well as, of course, implement. We've got Accenture, Deloitte in Australia, we've got Zuora and Cloud Sherpas as well. IBM in the US as well. So some of those large system integrator, and obviously that tends to be with the larger players, the larger organisations who those partners have been working with for 10 or 20 years. There's a number of smaller players, so again, on the what we call commercial space, with smaller businesses, $0 to $50 million type businesses, we've got smaller partners that help us either, they're not so much on the sales side, but implementation partners. We can't grow our global services team because the reality is billing is complex. As much as some of my prospects I think, well, can't you just push a button and say yes, it's on? It actually takes some discussion to get it up and running the way they'd like it to really work. So we need some channel partners to implement at all levels.
Yeah. And you have a direct sales force as well that goes with the channel partners? Or?
Strong direct sales force all over the world. Okay. Absolutely. So they support the partners, and like I said, that certain partners are growing on the sales side, but a lot of them have been implementation only partners initially.
We're talking to a lot of relatively small point solution vendors who go through some of these big companies like Accenture. A lot of them ultimately pull back from that because they don't find that those companies are giving them the visibility, that they have the focus that they really need. I mean, these companies are selling a broad range of software solutions and they focus on the big ones. Is that an issue, you think, for you in terms of getting the visibility and the focus from these channel partners?
Yeah, look, that's a difficult one. I probably have a personal opinion about that versus the company opinion.
Give us your personal opinion.
It is. So as I come from ERP. 15 years in ERP. So I would always work for the software vendor. It's awfully tough but there was a software vendor that was fairly stable. So we were selling, and the partners would also be selling, but there wasn't this massive growth. So the challenge for Zuora is massive growth, and our implementation team simply cannot keep up. So as the direct consulting team in a stable organisation, I want to be implementing myself. We're always going to be able to do it better. We've got an inside running to the development team. I believe we can do it better, and that those sort of partners don't offer as much. As a high growth organisation, there's a couple of things. They help us to scale much more quickly. We're not limited. They do get us into organisations, and our product is different. It's not some company saying, I think I need to replace my ERP. It's, I need to do something. My business is being disrupted. So they may be talking to these organisations in other areas, in a business consulting forum, rather than thinking about an IT system first. So we need to work with those partners, because that if they know about how to innovate these businesses and what the products are they need, then we're in a better position to start working with them. So I think it works for Zuora. It doesn't work for every software company, and in traditional ERP space, I tend to agree with you. Yeah. But not for us. It's very important for us.
Okay. What about you, Gareth? Is channel partners the route you're going to be using for the foreseeable future, or does it bring challenges?
Yeah. Look, any channel brings challenges as well. You've got a bit of a conflict there with channel. When you're running a channel in Zuora, obviously you're going to have conflict with the channel conflict, you call it there. But they play a really, really important part in scale. They play a really, really important part in awareness and growth. And I see that continuing going forward. The accounting channel and financial services type channels have been really, really good for us. But we also see new subsets of people that we call cloud integrators coming on, where they select 4 or 5 applications and they specialise in those. So there's more and more of those types of businesses coming up, and some of them are spawn out of accounting firms. We look at Deloitte Private and what they're doing, or what they did last year with their entire rebranding and restructuring, and using technologies such as Unleashed and Xero and Zuora as enablers of that transition across into new uncharted territory. So it's going to be interesting. Absolutely, there's always going to be a role for a channel, and yeah, they'll just continue to redefine themselves going forward.
Right. So, Chris, if that's the direction you think you'll still be taking in 5 years' time, you'll be sort of piggybacking off Xero, or do you anticipate more and more you'll be going independently of the mind of the Xeros?
Interestingly, we're actually currently having 4 different discussions with 4 different companies, one in Canada and the balance in Australia, and they're very different. They're managed services style companies that are operating to mid-sized group. So as a result of that, we're quite interested in perhaps leveraging that. And the reason why I say that is because it becomes like a bundled service. I really see, I've got a passion for that, is that, nobody lives in a bubble. And I think I've worked for too many vendors where you only see your own world through the vendor bubble. And so I think I've got a bit of a passion to sort of see if that will work. I know the partners will do a great job, and we'll make the solution as simple as we can, and we'll provide support on our side for those partners. But I think for those low number of single-digit worth of managed service partners to start with, considering when you launched in November, I think it's a really great start, and it shows the interest that they can see that there's going to be traction on their side with what we're doing as well. So it's actually interesting.
I've always seen it as being a natural attribute of cloud software. To look beyond your own bubble.
Yeah.
To pick up your point earlier. It just has to happen. And we've got no choice. If you want to keep your bubble, you can.
And maybe because you've developed best of breed, you haven't ever pretended to be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
You've developed best of breed, so you have to live within a family. For a business means all pieces of software.
Well, that was going to be another question I was going to ask. What do you think about the quality of cloud software? Is it as good as...
Fantastic!
I was going to say, putting yourself aside. It's relatively new. It's stacks of testing. Someone hasn't been developed yet. Case tools up there.
I'll get completely impartial view.
Yeah.
No, it's a
Good question.
It's a hugely interesting question. So for us, it's about feature set. So why do people not sign up to Unleashed? It's because we haven't developed the features that they need to run their business. So if you've got a system that you've been running, an ERP or a mid-tier accounting system, it's been developed for the last 20 years and seen the evolution of going from DOS to Windows and all that development that's gone into it. There's stuff in there that will do. The business has almost built a process around it, but because it's so set in its ways, it will continue to want to do that process. So we need to either redefine the process and give them a way of doing that differently, or just do a straight like for like. Now that takes time. When we're building for scale that we have to, we were doing more transactions than an Amazon when Unleashed isn't the Zuora. When we're doing hundreds of millions of transactions, we've got to really think about the quality of the code. We've got to really think about the user experience. So let's bring that to the fore. I mean, applications that we're building are running in a browser. Who would have thought that you'd be running your entire business in Internet Explorer? Don't use Internet Explorer.
You recommend what myself, do you?
Don't use Internet Explorer. You'll get a warning sign as soon as you shut it. It's like, warning, this is the worst application ever. Yeah, so, but who would have thought? I mean, the browser wasn't designed to run as much content as what we've currently got. So as developers, we've got to really think about the limitations of the environment that we're putting these people in and do what we can within the confines of those.
Just on that, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Do you think it's easier to stand an application up now?
To what, sorry?
To stand an application up now?
To stand it up?
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's really easy. Now it's just time.
But do you mean an extra function, or do you mean a completely brand new application?
A brand new application.
Yeah.
Like if you were to start something from scratch now, as opposed to doing it 10 years ago before cloud.
Yep, real easy. If we
Do you think
started
it's much
again, I
easier
think
now?
we could definitely do and probably a third of the time.
And do you think that's because of platforms out there like Azure, like AWS?
Now we're talking. So we have a look at some of those things that those guys have enabled us to do, and even around the big data play. So last year I went on a crusade on big data, say I've got all this data, I really want to do it. I'm having a look at it at 30,000 foot view. I want to start giving in some real examples and life examples to businesses and some things. So I had a look around there, and I had a look at some of the companies, even buying companies that were in there. And around the exact same time, Google brought out their API so that we could leverage their big data and their service. It's like, great, now let's crunch petabytes of data just using their API and only pay for what we use. Great, there's a solution. Sorry, I'm not going to buy you, Mr. Company, anymore. And then Microsoft bring out R and the same algorithms that they use around machine learning for Bing and for Xbox and all those things. It's like, great, let's use that. And there's a plethora of R scientists around, data scientists that know that technology that we could leverage off. I mean, the data scientists looking for a few, I found one, because there were 1,000 jobs just in Auckland alone going for that particular type of person. I mean, if you're at university now, go and do that as a degree, because you're going to get a job straight away. So yes, we can leverage Microsoft, we can leverage Google straight away and provide a solution, and just pay as you use. It's once again cloud computing using technologies.
So one of the things I wanted to go back to ask this question about quality, the answer is yes, by definition, because every one of these cloud providers are putting the customer at the centre. Therefore, their support is instantaneous, right? The quality of their product. If we release on a Tuesday night, you think by 6:01 on a Wednesday morning we haven't got a call if there's some problem and we have to fix it, within hours? That wasn't the case, in ERP on premise. No problem, Mr. Kant, we'll fix it within 12 months. But my core business, is relying on this. No problem. 12 months, I said, we'll get it to you. I mean, so the customer centricity has to drive quality software.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody here is focusing on the customer first.
Customer first. It's the most important thing. It's the number one value in our company. Number one.
Absolutely.
And the reason is because it's a month-to-month subscription business.
If you don't build a relationship with them, they can turn you off.
Exactly right.
Do that, yeah.
But it's more than that as well. It's because we now live in a social world where people are connected. I mean, you go on Facebook now and just drop a bad comment and see everyone sort of swarm to it. You've got all the telcos build data service teams that just do nothing but Twitter and Facebook now and responding to bad comments. And airlines are no different. We are no different, building massive support teams and building a social experience that people can talk about and share. Only one bad experience and that goes like wildfire throughout the world. So yeah, number one, most important person is the customer.
So where's the software being developed? In Australia?
Oh, India.
New Zealand? No.
I was so joking.
I know about Canada University, but that's got a good IT program in the cloud.
Yep, so we've got 45 developers in various different roles and positions, based all 100% of them in Auckland. We are looking at offshore, we're looking at building development teams in Melbourne and also the United States.
Have the universities adjusted to this new work?
Yeah, so we've got 10 interns working for us at the moment, and we've run a program, a huge vetting process. It's actually really, really intensive because most uni students are pretty bad. So we try and cherry pick the best of what we can find. It's getting quite exclusive. And we'll start sponsoring people into master's courses and even PhDs where it makes sense to look at doing that in this year.
My son started at Sydney University last year in the business department and business faculty. And it's becoming a pretty top-weighted subject now to get into big data analytics and all kinds of stuff now. It's becoming very popular to do, mainly because, like we're just talking about, you get a job straight out of university and get paid a handsome sum at that. So, yeah.
Sort of everyone's moving out of finance and looking at that sort of thing now. All the maths whiz.
And it's interesting.
So just before we finish, I just might like to ask each of the four members just to give some final thoughts on where you see your company will be, say in 3 years' time, and what are some of the major challenges that you think you have to face over the next 3 years to get there. Perhaps I could do it in reverse order, so sort of through the deep end, Peter, but maybe you can start. Where do you see Nimble Storage will be in 3 years' time? What do you see as the biggest challenges you're going to face over that period?
We're our fiscal year finishes tomorrow, Mark, and we're a publicly listed company. So if there are any bold predictions here, man, I'd get shot for being too aggressive. So let me just say, I'll still be here, I hope. No, I think the company will do really well. As a matter of fact, technically it can't be beaten from a storage device perspective. It's a great product, and the customers do, and as we all hope, word of mouth is a big thing, and that's huge for us. We're not a big, strong marketing company, and I'm sure even as the other vendors here are not, large organisations either, that word of mouth is a real key thing for the go forward strategy, and that's huge for us and has been so far. So I think we're going to be, in my opinion, the next big thing. I think we're a good chance to go past NetApp and really give. We're already replacing hundreds of MC and NetApp products around even Asia Pacific, so it's not going to be that difficult to make sure that's multiplied.
Yeah.
But having said that, we're in a very innovative space, and there's a lot of new and other technologies coming every single day.
So buy your shares now is what you say.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying anything like
Is there a
that.
safe harbour in front of
I'm not sold. I've not sold any of mine. Put it that way.
Gareth, you want to comment? Where do you see you'll be in 3 years' time, and what do you think the challenges in getting there are going to be?
Yeah, so looking a little bit beyond 3 years, but not too far beyond that. The main game for Unleashed is to be $1 billion company. We want to be the inventory management software of choice for people that obviously want a new component-based solution. In terms of the marketplace, there's going to be a growing appetite for solutions and more verticalized as well. I see solutions becoming more and more narrow and specific to industries and going deep into those. So giving, once again, the small guy or the small business owner a competitive advantage, or at least an equal playing field with the more established players in the world.
Chris?
I mean, our 3-year plan is to reach 5,000 customers, have offices in LA, New York, London, and of course, as it is already in Sydney. And to really use, similar to Gareth's point of view about his development team, to have a development centre in the US as well as here. Currently developed out of the UK, so we've already got that capability. Follow the sun approach, whilst it's an old phrase, it's something that I do actually absolutely love. I think it's, even though you absolutely want to keep a difference or a separation between support and development, I absolutely need support teams around the world in those places as well. So yeah, I mean, our current goal is to get 100 customer stories videoed on the website in the next 12 months, and that will really help drive that growth from a disparate and very different set of customers on purpose, so that we can show that asset management really is for the masses, and it really can be an innovative and transformative solution for your business. Right.
Okay, some final words from yourself.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to talk about financials. I mean, we see ourselves growing dramatically over the next 3 years, but it's very different. We're not a point solution. We very much see ourselves as the enabler for the innovation. And I went through a whole range, whether it be IT and telco, whether it be video streaming and media, Internet of Things, all of professional services. It's about working with the most innovative of companies. And our mantra is, very small startup, 3-month company. We can get them going really, really quickly, up to the very large companies because of our integration capabilities. But it's an enabler for building better relationships with your customers. That's it.
Okay, well, thanks very much indeed to all of the 4 vendors for your thoughts today. I hope you've all found today's session informative and interesting. I think there's no need to vacate the room immediately, is there? So feel free to continue to chat among yourselves for the time being. But
What's happening in Frost Sullivan?
ooh. Well, we plan to continue iterating, should I say, our research coverage. So one of the areas that we cover is ICT, but ICT is a very fast-changing area, so we have to constantly think about how we evolve the areas that we're covering from a research perspective to stay up to date. So we're focusing a lot of effort now on cloud, on what we call the Internet of Things, and doing more and more research on that, away from perhaps some of the more traditional sectors that we used to cover in the past, on application or on-premise software and so on. So very much a greater focus ourselves on cloud as well.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep, thank you. That's and continue to healthcare IT is another growth area. The use of IT in healthcare is an area we're focusing on.
Where does cloud come into that? Explain.
Oh,
Big data.
yeah. As with all industry verticals, cloud solutions are being adopted very widely in the healthcare sector. I mean, there are data sovereignty challenges that we've talked about. So healthcare is perhaps a little bit more challenging than some other industry verticals, but it's still becoming quite pervasive in many areas. So it's important. Pardon?
With healthcare?
Well, yes, I mean, the government sector is again one that, for which data sovereignty is a challenge. I mean, parts of the Commonwealth government don't even want to host data outside the ACT, let alone outside Australia. So, yes, I mentioned that is perhaps a bit more of a challenging sector to roll some solutions out, but I think even that's not going to be simple.
You can't trust the
Thanks very much, Mark.
Yeah, pleasure.